700 images. You come in with 57
Time
months.
has expired.
Why
Senators
did you
used 2
sentence
minutes
him to
over the
just
allotted.
57 months in the Stewart case? Do you want to address that? Because you're claiming it's cherry picking. In fact, you're welcome to explain any of these cases, but let's take the Stewart case.
Senator
Why
Coons,
did you sentence him for half the amount?
you're not recognized, Senator. Senator
Do
Coons,
you not want her to answer that question?
you wouldn't allow her any.
Mr. Chairman, she may answer the question. I've asked her why she sentenced Stewart.
You've gone over the time, Senator, by 2 minutes.
Why
and a half.
because you've interrupted me for 2 minutes, Mr. Chairman. Will you allow her to answer the question, or do you not want the American people to hear why, with someone she described as an egregious...
There comes a point, Senator, where you get a little bit...
Chairman Durbin, will you allow her to answer the question?
You won't allow her to answer.
I will happily allow her to... The question is,
Senator
why
Coons, you may
did you
proceed.
sentence Stewart, an egregious child pornography possessor, to half of the amount
Please, Senator.
requested by the prosecutor?
Please, Senator.
Your view of how to deter child pornography is not my view. I think you're doing it wrong, and every judge who does what you're doing is making it easier for the children to be exploited. If you're on a computer right now looking at a kid in a sexually compromising situation and you get caught, I hope nobody gives you a break because you use the computer.
A huge part of why this institution doesn't work well is because we have cameras everywhere. Cameras change human behavior. We know this. You don't have the same kinds of conversation over the dinner table with your family when you're wrestling through issues and apologizing for something and saying, I said this before, but maybe I should modify what I said. My tone was jerky. My substance didn't account for your position. There's a whole bunch of things that humans can do if they're not immediately mindful of some distant camera audience that they might be trying to create a soundbite for. And Instagram can be useful for some small things, but for intellectual discourse, it is not a friend. And I think we should recognize that the jackassery we often see around here is partly because of people mugging for short-term camera opportunities. And it is definitely a second and third and fourth order effect that the court should think through before it has advocates in there who are not only trying to persuade you 9 justices, but also trying to get on cable that night or create a viral video. So for what it's worth, I hope that the court doesn't respond to some well-meaning impulses from the Congress to push for cameras in the courtroom, but also some bullying. And there are ways that you can get to a lot of transparency. Audio recordings are increasingly released from the Supreme Court in timelier fashion over the past few decades. So for what it's worth, I'm glad that you on the court are making that decision, and I hope it isn't made for you by the Congress.
This is Republican Senator Ben Sasse presumably calling out members of his own party after the theatrics they displayed today. And just in case there was any doubt about what Sasse means when he says that certain people are vying for camera opportunities, here's a tweet that Lindsey Graham sent out just after the hearings, speaking with Hannity in just a few minutes on Fox News. Color me shocked. Or how about this from Ted Cruz, when an LA Times photojournalist sitting behind Cruz confirmed that he was searching his name right after his fiery exchange with Dick Durbin. And then, lest there be any doubt, he got his interview on Fox too. These people do not care about their constitutional advise and consent duty, they care about themselves. That's all. This is about raising their own profiles and trending on Twitter and getting booked for cable hits on Hannity. We don't even have to wonder because that's all been confirmed. These people are so self-important, I'm surprised they even noticed Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson was in the room with them. Now, as for this issue that she's soft on child pornography offenders that these Republicans are so desperately trying to surface, it's been debunked not only on every outlet that's considered the left, but even conservative outlets. In the National Review, Andrew McCarthy wrote, "I would oppose Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson because of her judicial philosophy. For now, I want to discuss the claim by Senator Josh Hawley that Judge Jackson is appallingly soft on child pornography offenders. The allegation appears meritless to the point of demagoguery. When you found a way to garner condemnation from every spectrum of the media, it might just be time to rein in the disinformation." Now, first off, here's what Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson had to say about exactly this issue.
What I'd like to answer is your points about my sentencings in child pornography cases. The point of the guidelines is to assist judges in determining what punishment to provide in cases. And there are horrible cases, but the idea is that between the range of punishment that Congress has prescribed, judges are supposed to be providing proportional punishment based on what a person has done. The sentencing scheme doesn't place everybody at the same level. The point of judging and the guidelines is to look at what has happened in a case, compare defendants to each other in terms of what they've done, and give proportional penalties based.
Mr. Chairman, this is she has said, Mr. Chairman, she does not use sentence enhancements in the area of somebody using a computer for everybody.
Can I explain why, sir?
I'm going to give the witness an opportunity to respond to you, Senator.
Finally.
At
Why?
the time that the guidelines were created for child pornography, this crime was primarily being committed by people who were literally mailing 1, 2, 5, 10, 100 photos at a time.
How's it being committed now?
Would she please
Go
let
ahead.
her complete her answer?
Go ahead.
As a result, the commission determined in the guidelines that it was a substantial aggravating factor if the facts of the case demonstrated that someone had been distributing hundreds of images, because what that meant was over this long, maybe it was a long period of time, they had collected one photo at a time, they had amassed it, they had potentially mailed one at a time, and that showed really aggravated, terrible conduct. I'm not saying as a baseline it's not terrible, it's all terrible. But what we're doing is we're differentiating among defendants. So in a world in which the mail is used for the purpose of distribution, it really matters whether the person has distributed 1 or 5 or 1,000. And so the guideline says, you know what? We are going to treat a person who's distributed 1,000 a lot worse, because that shows that this person is really engaged in this really horrible behavior. In comes the internet. On the internet, with one click, you can receive, you can distribute tens of thousands. You can be doing this for 15 minutes, and all of a sudden, you are looking at 30, 40, 50 years in prison.
Good. Good.
I understand,
Absolutely
Senator, but
good. I hope you
what we're
are.
trying to do
Good.
Allow her to finish, please.
I hope you go to jail for 50 years if you're on the internet trolling for images of children in sexual exploitation. So you don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's a horrible
That's
thing.
not what the witness said, and she should be allowed to answer this question once and for all.
Senator, all I'm trying to explain is that our sentencing system, the system that Congress has created, the system that the Sentencing Commission is the steward of, is a rational one. It's a system that is designed to help judges do justice in these terrible circumstances by eliminating unwarranted disparities, by ensuring that the most serious defendants get the longest periods of time. And when modes of commission of the crime change, such that in 2 seconds, someone can receive or distribute thousands of images, that's no longer and this is what the commission found in their studies, an indicator of a person who, relative to other people, has committed this crime in a more aggravated way.
Well,
and so what we're trying to do is be rational in our dealing with some of the most horrible kinds of behavior. This is what our justice system is about. It's about judges making determinations in meting out penalties to people who have done terrible things.
The point she's trying to make is that the severity of the crime will influence the punishment for the crime. Not all crimes are the same, obviously. Now, that's not to say any of the crimes are okay, which is what these Republicans are pretending that Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson is suggesting. She is very, very clearly not suggesting that. All she's suggesting is that different severities warrant differing degrees of punishment. And beyond that, if these Republicans actually have an issue with maximum and minimum penalties, it is them who can do something about it. The U.S. Sentencing Commission, on which Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson served, advises Congress on federal sentencing guidelines. But it's Congress that ultimately controls that sentencing by setting statutory minimum and maximum penalties. You'd think that if these Republicans were actually concerned about these penalties, they might have bothered mentioning it before today. Consider too that while Republicans make it their life's work to will this narrative into existence, 9 groups that represent domestic violence and sexual assault victims endorsed Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson in a letter, even further blunting the soft-on-crime narrative that Republicans are pushing. And finally, just one more note on this. If you needed proof that Republicans don't actually care about the actions of sexual predators, just remember what Ted Cruz said when asked if Roy Moore, the accused pedophile from Alabama, should remain in the Senate if he won his race.
If I could switch gears on this political matters here, Roy Moore is now leading in the polls again in Alabama. He could win that race. Mitch McConnell has said he would not be welcome in the United States Senate. Do you think he should be thrown out if he is?
Of course not, and I think we've got to respect the will of the voters.
So yeah, if you're looking for the person who's soft on child sex offenders, I think we just found him. So ignore the theatrics because that's all they are. They're a way for narcissistic, self-obsessed Republicans desperate to be president to get on TV. They don't care who they can drag down on their way up, so long as they can bask in just a few more moments of the spotlight. These people aren't in it for their country or their constituents, they are in it for themselves. And even their own Republican colleagues can recognize that. To see more videos like this, click the subscribe button right here on this screen. And if you want to support my work, subscribe to my podcast, No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen. I cover the most important stories each week, and my guest is always one of the top political figures, including Vice President Kamala Harris, Jen Psaki, Elizabeth Warren, Pete Buttigieg, Nancy Pelosi, Katie Porter, Cory Booker, and so many more. The podcast link is also right here on this screen, so give it a listen and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.